I love the fact that in heavy metal, whenever you have a supergroup project, it's just like this treasure trove of names. It's like whenever you listen to an Arion album, one of the first things that you're curious about is all of the different players that are playing part in this album, that are performing. So you go down the list of names and you get excited for it. And the same thing can be true for the band that we're talking about today, which is Avantasia, with their brand new album, Moonglow. This is a group that over the course of the past couple of albums, really since their inception, has been such a group where you immediately grow excited about an album prior to its release based on the people who are involved along with this supergroup. And there's definitely a lot of great vocalists that have contributed to Moonglow, which we will talk about very, very briefly. But really, whenever it comes down to it, Avantasia is epic power metal that has a little bit of a progressive twinge here and there, and really is able to tell a story. It's all about great storytelling, and as a result, these are albums that feel very beloved and larger than life. Moonglow is one such album, considering it's all about a creature that has to come to terms with what it is and what is happening to it. And it's a very, very cool concept that came 100% from Tobias, the leader of Avantasia's fascination with the moon. So already we have something that he's deeply curious about, that he was able to fashion a story based around something that he has a genuine interest in. So as a result, you know it's going to be more of a labor of love as opposed to just a half-witted story that's thrown together just for the hell of it, right? Actually, right, yes. So we're going to go with The Ghost of the Moon, the very first cut, which does not feature much in the way of bonus help. This is a nearly 10-minute long song that is a suited introduction for this album. Not to mention, musically, it grows you accustomed to what you were to expect. Within the power metal universe, you do have the opportunity of hearing those, very heavy, very quick and aggressive riffs, but this is one that also has a little bit more flavor to it. It's one that's able to go up and down a lot more in order to sort of fluctuate its muscles whenever it comes to the songwriting prowess. And Ghost in the Moon is an apt way to accommodate a listener that perhaps is experiencing Avantasia for the very first time. But immediately whenever you get in the Book of Shallows, track number 2, you start to understand the other part of what makes Avantasia so glorious to so many people, which is what we just previously spoke about. All of the different names that you have the ability to hear on one track, such as Hansi from Blind Guardian, Ronnie Atkins, Joran Land, and finally, and perhaps the biggest of them all, Mill from Creator. Whenever I saw that he was on this song, I was curious as hell to see what was going to happen. Were they going to make him aggressive, or is he going to instead be sort of transposed into this power metal environment? No, they actually carved out a section for him that sounded like it was Avantasia doing their best Creator impression. It was aggressive, it was thrashy, and Mill's voice just cuts through everything like butter. And at this point, my satchel is very, very full. Please take me home, I'm ready to go, if you know what I'm talking about. God damn, this was a really good song. Really, really powerful, too. I like how these voices, in just a 5-minute long song, I mean, there's like 4 different voices that are on this track, and they're all able to get their parts in. They're all playing a sincere, a sincere part in this, and it just sounds really, really strong. You almost wish that every single metal album had something like this going for it. A big community effort, because, man, you can understand why some of these names are beloved, considering they immediately shine over just about everything that they do. Moonglow features Candice Knight to continue on. This is the title cut. It's only about 4 minutes long, and she's from Blackmore's Night. And if you're familiar with that group, along with Richie Blackmore, they don't necessarily play the heavy metal veneer, but her voice is one of the paramount parts of that project, and it shows on Moonglow, where it just sort of caresses itself over the music. Getting into The Raven Child, which was the first single that we got off of Moonglow, features Hansi and John Lord once again. This is just a beautiful, beautiful epic. 12-minute proportions. Already, 4 cuts into this album, we're into 2 tracks that are within or beyond the 10-minute territory, and neither of these feel like it's, something that's happening too soon. They both feel like they play an absolute critical portion to exactly where we need to be. Now, the thing about this album being over 70 minutes is that you have to sort of cram all this in there. You have all of these different names that are lending their voices, and then of course it's dependent upon your story and dependent upon the music that you write for it. And really, this is not time that feels very wasted either, because as we get into the second half of this album with Invincible and Alchemy and even The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and what was he listening to, Pink Floyd whenever he came up with that one? I like it. It also features the lead singer from Magus. Magnum rather, I'm sorry. But the prior two, Invincible and Alchemy, both feature Jeff Tate. And what's interesting about this is that while Jeff Tate's material with Operation Mindcrime has been kind of shaky over these past couple of years, that trilogy was not necessarily as hot as it looked like it was going to be after its first album. You can tell that he still has pipes, and you can tell that he still has a terrific voice that he's able to lend here for Avantasia and make these songs pop and give them a lot of real flair and mobility. That's the thing. A lot of these different vocalists add an extra layer of kinesis to these songs, which makes them harder and harder to put down. Originally, if you're not that big of a fan of power metal, if you're not that big of a fan of epic storytelling power metal with progressive tendencies, you're not going to have an easy time getting through a lengthy album of that distinction. But with all these different voices coming your way, with some of these different performances, with the different cadences and the way in which this moves up and down, because that's the way a story goes, you find yourself really glued to this, and you find yourself really affixed to every single note, wanting to hear where the story goes next or whom shows up next. And as we go further on to Lavender and Requiem for a Dream, which features Michael Kiske, good lord, this is just what you would expect exactly from something of this variety. You have these great soaring guitars that also are able to tone itself down. You have phenomenal voice work, fantastic percussion, and really the whole thing is just ushered in and sort of conducted nicely by a gentleman that had this dream, this crazy wild dream of a metal opera, and has now been able to bring it as a reality for more than a decade, really pushing too. It's really cool to see. The last track, Maniac, features Eric Martin. It is a fitting closer, and then we get into Heart, which is a unique way to close things out. I like what this album does, and again, perhaps it's because Avantasia has always been, one of those supergroups, and supergroups tend to speak to me a little bit. These massive ensembles such as Arion, to bode another example, to deliver another real showcase of that. But the album itself is just very solidly conducted. If I were to have any complaints about this, and this really kind of nitpicky, is that even though it does have sort of all this flow to it, and even though it does have these different undulations, these ups and downs and things like that, at times it does bear itself as a bit predictable. Perhaps that's just what's happening due to age, since we have been and become used to Avantasia albums over the course of our lifetime. That might be the only reason why we sort of get the feeling where the man's musical mind is headed, as opposed to being surprised by every twist and turn. Again, I say that's an extremely minor complaint to have. The performances were all very, very good. I really enjoyed what I got with this album. I wonder if you did as well. What did you think about Moonglow? I'll tell you what I thought of it. 25 out of 30. Hell of an album, one that I think that if you like progressive, if you like power metal, really if you like any of the names that I just described to you as guests on this album, this is an instant buy, an instant desire, and really for those of you who have never experienced Avantasia, I encourage you to check them out because they are a unique it's a unique project, one of very few that exist in the heavy metal marketplace, and it's a great way to branch out and find new voices that you love, new performers, that you may want to follow. And that's what I really love about projects such as this one. Even though these names are huge and you would think that every metal fan on the planet knows them, that's not the case at all. In fact, you would be really surprised to know just how many people are able to gain new metal knowledge based off of these ensemble type projects. That's why I wish that there were more of them. But do tell me what you thought about Moonglow. My name is CoverKillerNation. Do that in the comments below, as well as scope out the description box as well, considering we have t-shirts that are available, as well as there's some things that are for sale, some DVDs, some CDs, a nice Dream Theater box set. Dream Theater. I think we're going to talk about them next. Stay tuned. I'll talk to you guys next time. See ya.